welcome to the Sanctuary, a safe space to speak from the heart. And my guest is someone I've been dying to talk to. Since I saw her swallowing sword on my TV screen, Krystal Kurio, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so, I've seen sword swallowing, and, I think, there's this. It's like you kind of think the sword, it's one of those swords that you push and then it goes in. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it wasn't until years ago I saw where they had an X-ray kind of showing that the thing is actually going inside. And from that moment, it's
Yes.
freaked me out because it just seems like human beings should not be able to do that.
That is correct. They shouldn't. But I think that's one of the things that's so cool about Sideshow is, it's an entire art that's pretty much built off of that dissonance of this shouldn't be happening, but it is.
So, how did you get into it? Have you always wanted to be a performer?
Yeah, so I have been a performer since I was 4 years old. It started with dance, and then when I was a teenager, I got into acting. I went to college for both of those things, but I never dreamed. 10 years ago, if you'd asked me or what I thought I was going to be doing in 2021, never would have thought of this. But what happened was I was in college studying dance and drama, and I took a clown class to figure out how I was funny because I was generally a dramatic actress. And I just fell in love with it. So I joined a clown troupe right out of college, and they encouraged me to take this class in Commedia dell'arte. And one of the other
What
students
is
in
that?
that class,
What
I
is
found out.
Del?
Commedia dell'arte is a really cool art form. It is largely improvised street theater,
Oh.
and it's where we get a lot of our archetypes in comedy. It was originally from Italy, so it's basically clowning, just a very specific kind. And so I was taking this clown class, and I found out one of the other students in the class with me was a sword swallower. So I thought about that for about, I think it was 3 months. And I'm a pretty shy person. So I worked up the courage to find them on Facebook, and I sent him a message. I was like, "Hi, I don't know if you remember me, but I think that what you do is really cool, and can you teach me how to swallow swords?" And he said yes.
Okay.
And it just snowballed. Yeah.
What's the process of learning how to swallow a sword?
So it is a very intense process. Essentially, what you're doing is you are attempting to swallow 7 times a day, but every time is 3 times, so 21 times a day. And depending on who your mentor is, then you might be doing it a little differently. Some people say go straight to the sword.
Oh, God.
My mentor had me start with a wire hanger, and I don't mean the pointy, sharp, scratchy end. I mean, if you take the triangle and you pull it from the center of that bottom bar straight down so that it makes a very long U shape, similar to a blade, that's what I trained with. And it was very intense. You get no break days.
That's insane.
And it was basically wake up, swallow, eat, swallow, go to work, swallow, take your break, swallow. You get the picture.
And then, how long will it take to put the hanger and then bring it out? And are you not gagging the entire time?
Absolutely. I gagged a lot. It is not a pretty process. And my roommate, actually, one of them had to leave the room every time I did it because she just she heard the sound and she wanted to puke. Yeah, it's real cute. See, those are the things. It's like people, they kind of like fetishize sword swallowers, especially women. So it's like, if you only knew how much grossness went into making this happen. But yeah, there was a lot of, like, the first time I tried, I remember very distinctly. I took the wire hanger over my mouth, touched it to the back of my throat, just barely, and literally the words out of my mouth, yeah, that's not happening.
And then so how long did it take from doing the 21 times a day process to actually swallowing a sword?
So I did that for a couple months before I even bought my first sword. In my mind, there was like a lot of anxiety around the first sword. It had to be like perfect, and there was so much pressure after I had it, right? So I think it was probably about 5 months, and I had it down after 2 weeks, but I didn't get comfortable with it for a couple months.
Oh boy. So
Yeah.
so I guess, I mean, I think each time is like a different experience, but you've done it how many years now?
This is my 8th year sword swallowing.
So, like, can you just do it? You know what I mean? Like, no, maybe like a little warm up, but like, do it. Just get your sword and stick it in and that.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. It's funny because normally I work so often that like I don't really have to think about it that much. And warming up always helps. I don't care what you're talking about, whether it's writing or like playing a sport, warming up is always a good idea. But when I'm working that often, absolutely, I can just like toss one down pretty much at any point. And I can still do that now, but because there's been like such a gap in work, sometimes I doubt myself a little more. So I try to warm up these days.
So yeah, let's talk about Go Big, because that's where I saw you. I'm like, the first act I saw was like you put a nail up your nose and then you hammered it in, and like Snoop Dogg and Cody Rhodes, everyone at Rosario, they were just like cringing when you were doing that. And then you're like, oh, no, I'm not done. And then you put the sword down your throat, and then you had Cody take it out. Oh my God. It was a great performance though. But, it's kind of like, I don't want to watch it, but I have to watch it.
Right.
How did you get on Go Big?
That's, I think, a shared experience.
So yeah. So how did you get on Go Big?
Go Big was kind of out of left field for me. I was majorly in a depression, worst depression of my life, like total fog. But I have one friend, the amazing Boobzilla, who they're one of those people who's just kind of like taps me every couple days, like, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, you're doing great. And one day, they were like, hey, I just talked to a producer about this new show that's kind of like AGT. You should text them and try to get in on it. And so eventually I texted them. I was glad that they said text because, like, calling is a lot of pressure. So I texted them. We had a conversation, set up a Skype interview, and it went really well. And then I heard nothing for weeks. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I didn't get that. But then I got a call. I was like, hey, they love you. They want to push you through to the next round. So, like, let's schedule another thing. And then there's a lot of back and forth. Like, hey, we need you to record this and email it to us. And that was great, but can you do it like this? And if you have more, send that too. and then more silence. And I remember once it started seeming more like it was going to happen,
Yeah.
I started getting really nervous because in the middle of a pandemic, I have like a contamination anxiety, and this is a lot of pressure. It's national television, so I'm like starting to doubt myself and whether I should do this thing. And then they send me the contract, and it's 30 pages, very intimidating.
Oh my God.
I had like yeah, I had a mentor and 2 lawyers look at some stuff that I wasn't super into. And I actually said no.
Oh.
I turned them down. Yeah, and I remember my producer, Shweta, who I love, she emailed me back and she was like, hey, what are your specific problems with the contract? I'd love to see if we can like work something out. And I didn't even respond.
Wow.
I was just like, I resigned myself, like, this isn't happening.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. And then the executive producer called me and he was like, hey, I just want to see if we can work something out. Like, I think you're going to be really great for the show. And they just upped the appearance fee. So, like, what can we do? And they tweaked some stuff for me. And I was like, okay, well, here we go. It was so unexpected. And it was a really big part of, I think, my kind of ongoing healing process during this pandemic, because losing your career, and I think a lot of us talked about this in our like bio sections on Go Big, is like we lost all of our work, we lost our livelihood, but we lost our careers, like what we had built our lives on and around. And especially when you're an artist and your work is the thing that you love, it's so intertwined with your identity. So, you know, being given this opportunity to do what I love safely, and with such a big audience, it was amazing.
You mentioned safely. You know, I know there's a lot of COVID protocols on shoots that are happening pretty much everywhere around the world. What were some of the things you experienced? And like, you are able to stick a nail up your nose, so I'm guessing like the COVID thing was pretty easy for you.
Oh yeah, COVID tests are a breeze for me. Like, I can't tell you how much I wish that there was some way I could like make a business taking tests for people, because it's a breeze. Basically, the way they did everything for Go Big, before we even left, they had COVID tests sent to our homes. We had like a video chat appointment with a nurse, and they walked us through the process. Once we tested negative, we were cleared to travel. They flew us on a nonstop from where we were to where they were, you know, on the safest airline. And then we were part of the bubble. So we quarantined for, I think it was 4 days after we arrived, and we had to test negative again twice. And after that, we were officially in the bubble. But they completely bought out this hotel for, I think it was actually like 2.5 hotels for us.
Wow.
Yeah. And basically, they shuttled us from the hotel to the convention center every day. And they had these 3 zones, A, B, and C. All performers were part of A. Some of the crew that was like still working in the performance area, but mostly behind the camera, that was zone B. And then there was zone C. And A and C never came into contact. I think it was C and maybe B were the only people who were allowed to leave the bubble at all, and that was only for like special approved production reasons. So we were like heavily protected and getting tested basically every other day. It was 3 days a week.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, luckily for me, like, so what we call it, what you're talking about, is the human blockheads, where we hammer a nail or other various objects into our nasal cavity. Um, so COVID tests are kind of a breeze. The hard part was waking up early to take them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not a morning person, so I can sympathize with that. So you got into the bubble, you did the show. Oh yeah, I forgot. You also had Cody Rhodes step on you. This is
Yeah.
it's like it's like your mind kind of messes with you when you see this little dainty human being, and like she's like, yeah, go ahead, step on me. I'm like, are you sure? And he's like 200 and something pounds, and you're doing it on a bed of nails too. It's like insane. It was insane.
Yeah. Yeah. People, it's funny because, like, you always get those trolls. But people were very fixated on my bed of nails and how dumb everyone was for thinking it was impressive. Excuse my cat's tail. Um, and like, oh, I did that at like the kitty museum. It's not that hard. It's just science. And I mean, that last one is hilarious because, I mean, literally everything is science, right? um, but especially bringing up like the kids museum, if you look at those beds of nails, like, yeah, they're real nails, but they're very close together, and basically you lay on them and they come up through like a plastic layer, like holes in plastic, so they like gently lift you up, right? Or the plastic goes down, I forget which, and it kind of tickles because like I've done it too, but it doesn't hurt. They're very close together, so each nail is supporting a very small amount of weight.
Mm.
My bed of nails, those nails are much farther apart than at any of those science museums, so each nail is supporting a larger amount of my weight.
And
And then you,
when you stood up, you could see the marks on your back too.
yes, absolutely. And then you add like the 219 pounds of Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. Oh my god. Oh my
It's
god.
not easy. It's not comfortable. It is amazing. These people are like, it's not that impressive. Like those nails. Like they were acting like the goal was to kill myself or something. Like,
But see, that's the thing
wait,
about the internet, right? People are just behind their computer
yeah,
screens typing away.
yes,
Actually, you know what? Talking of like the internet and social media, you have a great following, and you swallow swords. Like, do you ever get weird messages, especially from guys?
absolutely,
Mm.
all the time. It's quite appalling to see what people think is okay to say to perfect strangers. Recently, someone sent me a message that just said, "Deep throat me." The
Wait,
day
wait.
before
That's
that, I
all
got
the
a dick
person
pic.
said.
Yeah, that's all. No,
Uh,
not a question mark, not a hi, just deep throat me. Um, and someone else is like, "I bet you give great head," and it's like, why? Just why? So the one who said deep throat me, I actually ended up having a conversation with him, and this is something I do not normally do, and I don't recommend anyone do on a regular basis. It takes so much emotional labor. So basically, what I ended up doing was I kind of took a survey actually of my friends, what they would respond,
mhm.
and even not beyond my friends, like some of my followers. And after kind of thinking about it and thinking of various options, I decided I was going to try to have a conversation, like a real one.
Mhm.
So I just asked him, like, what was it that you were expecting as a response
Mm.
to this statement, this command? Um, And it was interesting because he was like, honestly, I didn't expect you to respond. And I figured that you know, being a sword swallower and a woman, an attractive woman, like, you probably get stuff like this all the time, and you know, it wouldn't be a big deal, which is crazy to me because it's like, you would think that if you thought something was happening to somebody that was inappropriate or might cause distress, you would think wouldn't you would think the logic would be, I'm not going to add to that, not because it's already there, it's okay to add more.
Yeah.
But I guess that's just not the case. But we had a conversation about it, and you know, he did the human thing and got a little defensive and was like, well, you're a sword swallower, so you're kind of asking for it, was the implication. And eventually I got him to understand, like, when this stuff happens all the time, it is exhausting and aggravating. And even though I'm sure I didn't, like, magically fix him, you know, he had a small epiphany, and I do think that it was honest. Like, the way it happened was, I think, very real. And that's important to me. You know, I saw he had a small child, a baby boy, and it's like, I could respond, I could be mean, but that's only probably going to reinforce whatever he already has in his head. But maybe if I just have this conversation, he'll pass something healthier along to his kid.
Probably. Yeah, no, that's really thoughtful. But let's go back a bit though. You do the clown class, you do the hanger down your throat, and then you start swallowing swords. How did you go from that? Like, did you plan to go start performing, or like, what was the plan exactly? I'm going to learn to swallow swords, and then what?
I didn't necessarily have something that was planned out. And this is also just kind of how I live my life, is like, I find things that interest me, and I kind of like, I guess the easiest way to put it, be like, I just kind of like follow my heart or my instincts. So I was drawn to sword swallowing. I was already a performer. And I originally started combining it with my clown work. And the way that happened was honestly just by chance. I was watching a show around Halloween time, and I was standing outside, and the producer came out to smoke a cigarette, and we started talking, and he asked what I did. And so I told him, well, I'm a clown, dancer, actress, and I've learned how to swallow a sword. And he looks at me and he goes, because he had a sword swallower there that night as well, he's like, is your sword bigger than that guy's? And I said, yes. And he goes, do you want to work tomorrow? And I said, yes. I had no act developed at this point, so I went home that night and in less than 24 hours created, I think it was probably like a 5 to 7 minute act that I still sometimes use today.
Oh, wow.
Even though it's evolved a little. Yeah. Like, I remember that night, it was so crazy because, like, I got up there and I did this thing that I basically just, like, threw together, and the crowd was going nuts over it. And it was, you know, just this very rewarding moment of, like, you don't suck. Like, you could actually do this. Yeah, so that's how I started. And in the beginning, I was performing exclusively as my clown Winnie. But she's a silent character, and there became a need because, so about a year after that first show, I got a call from my mentor saying, like, hey, our company, FreakShow Deluxe, needs a sword swallower out in Denver for Halloween season, 5-week contract, do you want me to put your name in? And at the time, I was working at a factory, in the office and partially in the factory, and they really liked me. But it's not what I wanted to do with my life. So I was like, hey guys, I got this offer to take this contract, and I think I'm going to take it. So the boss like pulls me into his office and he goes, hey, we're going to pay for part of your health insurance and also give you another raise. And mind you, at this point, they'd already given me 4 raises. So this is 5. This is raise number 5.
That's insane.
In
That
less than
is
2
insane.
years. Right? That doesn't happen, especially in America. That doesn't happen. So they really wanted to keep me, and they were offering me something that was very secure. And I said no. I said, thank you, but I have to go do this thing. So I quit my job for a 5-week contract, had no idea what I was going to do afterward, but I knew this was the right thing to do. And I worked with one of the main people in the company, in FreakShow Deluxe. She's our sergeant at arms, we call her, Miss Malice of Forethought. And there were 3 of us, and the other performer was texting me. I was the first one to arrive, but this other performer was texting me and scaring me, basically being like, oh, Alice is military, and like she's so strict, and like I just had this picture of like this mean human, and I was like, oh my god, is she gonna make me make my bed? And like, you know, because we're sharing a room. And she shows up, and she is just the coolest person. And we got so tight, and she was like, we have a lot of things in common. We both grew up dancing and acting. And she asked me, like, what do you see yourself doing with your life? And for me, my only real goal is just, like, do what I love and be able to live comfortably off of it. And she was having a conversation with the owner of the company, Thomas, and she was like, she's great. I think we should, keep her, essentially. So I've been with the company, I guess that's 7 years now. Yeah, and I am currently the president of the Los Angeles chapter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How long have you been in that position?
So that's a great question. I want to say about 3 years,
Nice.
maybe a little more. But yeah, so when I started taking on more responsibility with the company, it was about the time that my mentor, who was the vice president at the time, he retired, and he was our main talker. And remember, I'm a silent clown.
I was just about to ask what a talker is.
Yeah, so talker is a person who, I think most people, if you think of like Barker, it's kind of that. It's the voice of the show, kind of the host that will often talk over other people's silent acts. So, to hype the audience up and kind of be that through line. So we lost him. There was another performer that wasn't a part of the company, but we hired often, that we decided to cut ties with. So there was like this big gap, right? Like nobody's there to be the voice. And I saw that need, and I was like, okay, Krystal, this is the time. You gotta be you now. You gotta be you. And I mean, granted, like, Krystal Kurio is a little different from, like, me, Krystal.
Yeah, definitely.
But, it's just like, honestly, in a weird way, it was a much more vulnerable way to perform than as my clown.
Yeah, because
a clown nose is just a very small mask, right?
So now it's kind of like you being you, well, at least a version of you.
Right, yeah. And it opens you up to all sorts of different kinds of criticism. Like, clowns can be sloppy and messy and fail. It's their job to fail. If they're failing, they're doing it right. But as a woman, there's a lot of there's certain expectations, right? You have to be pretty and graceful and la la la. So that gave me a lot of anxiety when I thought about performing as like a human and not a clown. But But as I've performed and grown as a performer and really grown into the Krystal Kurio character, I think I've found fun ways to kind of like take that expectation and turn it on people. Like, okay, I'll play your game, I'll be pretty, I'll be sparkly, but you know what? I'm gonna do some weird stuff and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, that is exactly, the vibe that came through, especially on Go Big, because the next time I saw you, you broke glasses and you were jumping on it. And then you put your face in it. Oh my God. Why?
I mean, everyone has to exfoliate, right?
Oh, so you've been with the company for 7 years now. Well, COVID happened. How did that affect everything?
So, as soon as the safer at home order hit, things were immediately canceled. And, at first, it seemed like it was only going to be maybe a month. And then, as we went on, we knew it was going to be longer. So, the things that we thought were sure, slowly started leaving as well. So essentially, there's no work. It's like my career just almost doesn't exist. All the things that I have been able to do safely have been on film, like Go Big Show, and then I did 2 smaller projects. But it's like, even when people do have parties, they're often not safe. So if they're looking for entertainment and they reach out to us, a lot of the times we have to turn it down because we have very strict COVID safety guidelines that we made for ourselves to protect not just us, but also our guests, This thing is very insidious, and especially with all the mutations, like, even if you're vaccinated, it doesn't mean you're protected from everything. But people are just, unfortunately, more concerned with having a good time. Like,
Yes.
in
Tell me about
October,
it.
yeah. In October, I got a call to do, it was basically a reality show episode about an out-of-control house party. And granted, it was outside, but it was this massive party with a bunch of people running around without masks on.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, exactly. And like the last gig that I had to turn down, the person booking the event, when I asked, like, hey, what are your COVID safety precautions that are being put in place, she was like, I'm so tired of COVID. I'm so over it. I'm just like, okay, I get it. We're all tired, but like, what?
All right. Oh my God, no.
You can't just make that decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I guess, like, do you do anything virtually?
Yeah, so it's not really work. I mean, it's work to create for it, but I try to do, on average, 1 virtual show every month. This month I'm skipping, but, just as something to kind of look forward to and something to give myself some sort of structure, something to work toward. But they're really fun. Everyone does them a little differently, but the company that I work with the most often, they have a really cool structure where basically, like, the show happens. It's usually a mixture of pre-recorded acts, which I prefer because I'm an artist and I'm weird about, like, if you're watching me on a screen, I want you to
See the best.
see something that is unique to watching me on a screen. Like, I'm not going to copy paste my stage act for you. That's boring. But some people do live acts, and then the audience is in the chat, like, cheering and commenting, and then afterward, we just have, like, a big Zoom party and hang out and talk, which is really cool to, like, connect with the fans and my fellow performers.
Earlier on I mentioned the thing about, being you and being on Instagram and, just social media. People like what that guy said. But you're also
Hmm.
Asian American, right? And
Yes, yes.
um, recently there was this violent attack on just actually no, just on the Asian American community.
Yeah.
How I guess how was that experience for you?
It's been really hard. You know, there's a lot of fetishization of Asian women specifically, who were, you know, the majority of the victims of this attack. And that's most often the kind of racism that I encounter. Um, you know, just kind of being thingified and objectified as this exotic kind of being. And I think especially, well, I don't want to say especially, but specifically with me, because I'm mixed, it's like I'm Asian light. So it's like, I'm Asian enough to be exotic, but I'm white enough to be like acceptable. um, and and it's not better than or worse than. I think it's just a different kind of messed up as people who are um, exoticized for being only Asian. People will, it's amazing. White men will brag about having yellow fever. And it's like, and very similar to conversation about coronavirus, it's like, I am not a disease. I am not a virus. Like, I'm a human. So, no, you don't have yellow fever. You're a white wolf. You are a predator. Um, but watching something like this happen, um, it gives you a certain kind of grief. You don't know these people, you don't know their families, but you know people like them. You know that they're part of your community. Um, and every day I think of something a little different, maybe a little deeper. The first day, I think it was just shocking. Like, I was just absorbing the fact that this happened and this was happening. Um, because racism against Asian Americans, I think, is one of the most covered up forms, because we are light skinned often. Um, and there is this model minority myth, right? Where we're kind of elevated in order to weaponize our race against other people of color. Um, if the Asians can do it, then like obviously there's something wrong with all of you melanated people. Um, but um, the second day, I just remember breaking down. It was like the day that all the feelings kind of burst through. And now I think I'm just kind of like sorting through those and learning how to articulate them. Yesterday, my main thought that I kind of meditated on, I had a friend who is Taiwanese, and his mom shared with him this really beautiful thing. Like, when someone is dying, you should kind of like talk to them sweetly, and reassuringly, like, you did your
Mm.
best. It's okay. Like, you know, you can go. Um, and I just thought, like, these people, they didn't have the opportunity to have that moment with their family. They didn't get to say goodbye to their loved ones. They just walked out the door to go to the spa, and they never came back home. And it's so heartbreaking. Because, I've received so much fetishization for being Asian, and even hate. Not long ago, I got stalked through a convenience store by someone who recognized me as Asian. And when I lost him, he waited for me by the exit.
Oh God.
And as I walked out, and I was just in flight mode. I was like, don't make eye contact, just walk fast. He chased me out and yelled after me, interesting eyes. And a lot of people, I think, would be like, oh, well, that doesn't mean that. It's like, no. The way he said it, he was angry, he was threatening, and he was very much saying, like, you're Asian, you are a suspect, and you are not welcome here. And this is a store that I go to every week. Yeah. So if me, being mixed, gets that, what about my mom, my uncles, my great aunts? And I feel like there's a new video every day of someone's auntie, uncle, granny, grandpa being harassed. And it's just like, especially on the elderly, why?
Exactly.
One of my friends, her grandma shared a story with her about these kids making fun of her and I think throwing things at her, and she said, like, I think they didn't think I understood English, so I don't know if it's like that. And that's another thing, like, people who not only look more stereotypically Asian than I do, but people who have accents or, maybe aren't entirely fluent in English, like, those people also face more discrimination. So I'm just, like, it's so scary. I'm so scared for not just the people I love, but, like, the people in the greater AAPI community. So yeah, still something I'm processing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that and talking, I guess, through your emotions and how the last couple of days have been for you, actually. Yeah, I didn't want to end on a heavy note, so can I say your swords?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
So these are the ones that I use most often because they're very versatile. For any Harry Potter fans, these are Godric Gryffindor swords. They're just souvenir swords. They're really good for stacking, which is why I love them.
How many can you put in at once?
So far, 3.
Why would you do that, Krystal?
I don't know. I just wanted a sandwich.
A sword sandwich. Oh my God, that's like, oh no. Okay, and how long is a sword?
So let's see. These are different lengths because it looks prettier. I think the shorter one is 18 inches, and the longer one, I think that's maybe 22.
My God. And you take it all the way to the hilt, right? Yeah, because that's what you did, and then Cody pulled it out. Oh God.
Yep. Did you see the video of him reacting to that? Like... Oh my God. He was like, what did he say? I forget, but it was really cute because you're like watching this tough wrestler guy, and he was like very concerned for me and like unsettled, and he was like, she's okay. I never want to do it again. Anyway, so this is one of my other swords. It's a saber. So you can see it's slightly bent, ever so slightly. And it's a little thicker than this one. I think this is the shortest sword that I own, though. It's only 16 inches, which is the
16
bare
is
minimum,
not short
I
to
believe, at this
put
point.
up your throat. I'm sorry. I mean, I've just a finger touching my throat. I'm like, oh my god, something wants to come out, right? And you're sticking it all
Right.
the way in. I can't even wrap my mind around it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have multiple gag reflexes. It's not just the one at the back of your throat. There are more through your esophagus.
Okay.
But yeah, so this one actually has a fun
Yeah.
story. Well, first, my friend from my old office job that I was talking about, Chiranjeev, he bought this for me before I left. And so this one, I was working with the sword at a gig that I really shouldn't have taken because it wasn't worth it. It was like an 8-hour day of walking around and doing various sideshow acts, not on a stage, in a
Oh my
crowd.
god.
Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
this
and
was
about
before COVID. Never
7.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, this was before
Yeah.
COVID. This is probably like 2016 or
Okay.
so. And I stationed myself outside of some, like, the theater doors. Um, and I was swallowing the sword. And I mentioned there's a slight curve. And for me, the only way that I can comfortably swallow this is with the curve to the left. I got a little tired and wasn't paying attention. I put it down with the curve to the right. And when it didn't go, I like pulled it out a little and it still wasn't. So I was like, well, maybe if I just give it a gentle nudge. And I ended up probably perforating my esophagus.
No.
There was blood. Yeah.
Oh.
I did not go to the hospital.
Why not?
Well, it didn't seem that bad. So what it felt like, I mean, there was a sharp pain, which is the point at which I was like, this is bad. And it felt like when you are eating dry food and your muscles are just like pulling. But with an air bubble instead of food. It was very uncomfortable. What I did do was I talked to one of my friends who was a doctor. I was like, hey, I did this thing. I felt these things. Is this bad? And he was like, well, I mean, I feel like if you punctured it, then like you would probably know. But like maybe just keep an eye on it, and if it gets worse, definitely go to the hospital. I probably should have.
Oh my god.
But it did get better, but it was like almost a whole week of that really uncomfortable feeling and like sharp
Did you
pains.
still swallow it or?
I do.
And she's like, okay, yeah. I mean, I understand. Like now with COVID, things are kind of slow, but hopefully, the vaccine is really rolling out and things that open up. Because it would be nice to actually have you perform in front of a crowd again. And I'm
Yes.
also really, really grateful having you come on the show and sharing so much, especially, like really personal feelings about what happened in Atlanta. So for that, I'm super grateful.
Thank you so much
But
for
like,
having
yeah,
me.
we should do this again. And I
Absolutely.
was wondering, I guess, I want to take out the show with some clips of you just doing what you do, like back when life was normal.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Krystal.
Thank you.